Hi, guys. Donnie Rouse here, founder of Rouse Coffee Company, creator of the One Life Blueprint, and host of the podcast One Life with Donnie Rouse. Have you ever wanted to live a life with more passion? Have you ever wanted a life with more fulfillment? Do you ever want to wake up and say, you know what? I know exactly what I'm doing and it's fulfilling to me. Do you want to make your life filled with meaning? What I'm about to show you there, this is the process that I walk through in order to create those results in my own life. And what I'm going to do right now is I wanted to help by showing you a formula to actuate those dreams, but by giving you just an example as in terms of how powerful and what the effects of taking that conscious control of your life can mean when you know what the vision is you're going after. You know why you're going after. You have the beliefs, the strategy, the goals, the identity, and you're taking the action all in alignment to it. So let me first tell you about how I came up with this process. So it started with a desire to live more of life. Like I had this belief that life was meant to be lived. Everyone around me, like my parents, school, everyone was like, "Hey, save, do all the things you want to do once you've worked for 40 years and you have no life left." No, I'm going off on a rant. That's not really what they said, but they wanted me to put it off. And to me, it didn't make sense for putting off life for some later point because not a single day is guaranteed. So I was fascinated with this idea of living the most passionate version of my life and not putting it off, but living it right now. And in doing that, I was looking for a framework, a way to organize my life so that nothing got left out, but that I was making strides in all the different categories. It took me 13 years. So I went through a lot of personal development, a lot of personal growth, going to seminars, reading books, having coaches. And when I went through this, when I was doing all the different courseworks, the programs, they were all missing something. Right? Sometimes the syntax wasn't there, meaning like the order. So as a result, it didn't make sense, right? It's like if you are baking a cake and you don't put the ingredients in right? Like mixing the dry ingredients and then adding all the wet ingredients, right? If you fumble it around, it messes the result. And so was the case with the courses I was taking. So the syntax was off. The second one is like I would buy these courses and they would leave me to myself. Like I had questions I couldn't even get answers to. So when I was confused, what do you do when you're confused and you're not really sure of where to go and there's no one to like give you guidance? You're like, all right, throw that towel in. So it made me look for other answers. And then there were those that were just like too complex, where the process was so drawn out and so daunting that like I did finish. I always finished, but it was hard. So I wanted to look for an easier way to create a vision for my life, something that would pull me forward, something that would excite me, that was worked for my life as well, something that was easy to measure and manage, but also reminded me of what it was I was going towards. And this is the process, is what I call the One Life Blueprint. And I want to share with you right now some case studies, and I want you to just to see how the entire process is effective and how it can improve your life. In where I'm about to share right now, I was going to go into some case studies of people that I had worked with and helped using this, but I thought it would be more effective to share some of the results of my own life in this part, because it really has transformed so many areas of my life by putting this constant focus there. The first was my relationships. So I travel around the world. I have friends all around the world, but yet at the same time, I always felt disconnected. I always felt alone. And when I worked through this category, I realized that in many places, one, I wasn't giving the time to these areas, like to maintain these friendships. I had some close friends that I maintained, but like a lot of them that the relationships I had, I wasn't putting the energy in. As a result, receiving the energy, right? Because when you put the energy into a relationship, you give gratitude and all this stuff, you get it back. And while I may be a little bit more critical of myself, right? Because the fact that I'm still keeping in touch with many of the people that I had met in my travels from over a decade ago, maybe like, from the beginning of I started traveling, means that I was maintaining it, but it wasn't to the standard that I wanted for my life, and it wasn't giving me the emotions that I wanted. So I realized that through this process of developing a vision, the purpose, that I had to be the friend that I wanted to show up for me, right? So I had to treat others how I want to be treated. But also I had to prioritize. I had to make time because I was always ambitious, all these things I wanted to do and achieve. And it often came at the cost of those things that are most important to me, like, my relationships. So as a result, then I said, okay, well, what, let me start planning these things because, one, they're important, right? If you don't maintain a relationship, what happens usually happens, right? It falls apart. You fall distant because, you lost touch. So I started making time for this friendship. I also became more vulnerable and sharing more of my true self, right? Because that's what the relationships are built on anyways. When I think of the people that I was closest with, it was because I was having these level 3 conversations, meaning these deep conversations. So I started having more of those. So it literally transformed how I feel about my friendships and how, and now I'm moving that as a result of putting energy and focus in that category. Now that category is improving. Another one is in the love area of my life. So I am not currently, at the moment of this recording, I am not currently dating anybody. And with that, I would often, I would travel and meet someone, I might have a fling. But when I put the stakes in the ground, I say, okay, well, what is it that I want? What is it that what is the ultimate vision for the area of my love life? And when I'm saying love, I'm using the love relationship, like my significant other. And when I got clear about that vision and why I wanted it, now all of a sudden when these distractions came up, right, when, there was the potential fling, now all of a sudden it didn't pull me the slightest, because all of a sudden I was, no, this is not what I want. So what it did was it gave me, it's like putting blinders on. It reminded me of what it is I was moving towards and what was going to pull me out of that path, which is, doing something else, taking some of the emotions away and maybe scattering my focus. So as a result, I'm focused on what I want, and I'm working on this category. I haven't been dating that much, but what I'm trying to say is, I'm not wasting time on things that is not going to fulfill me. But when something real comes, then and only then will I now start to put my emotions and my focus there. And let's start with the business. So for the last decade or so of my life, I had been building my coffee business. And in a lot of ways, I was building it without really knowing what I wanted out of the business. When I applied the One Life Blueprint process to the business, I realized that, yes, I was committed to all these things. I was committed to growing the business in these ways. But there was another side of it in terms of the lifestyle, right? Because your career, your business, really, it's there to feed your life. So when I brought awareness to that, now all of a sudden, now building the business with consciousness, now it's okay, well, I could build this, but it has to be built in this way. So it gives me all these other things. And as you can guess, right? Imagine you're building a coffee company. One way you can do it is you can just start opening cafes. But if you want freedom and, you want to be kind of like freedom of location, right? You want to be able to work from anywhere, then having cafes isn't really the right result for you. So I realized this really quickly after doing the vision for my life. For my business. And then I'll also go into one more. This one is with regard to family relationships. Excuse me. So in doing the family relationships, one of the relationships I always felt that I was at a tug of war with was with my father. And we had some health scares over the last few years. And during that time, it really made me look at I was scared. Like, I think the one thought that no one wants to face, like, well, we think our parents will live forever, right? Sometimes we think we live forever, but it's just not the case. That's not life. And so in doing this process, I made me think about, well, what is the relationship that I want to have with my parents, with my family? But I'm focusing on my parents for this one. Knowing that time is limited for all of us, right? I wanted those years to be the best years of my life. I wanted those years to be where I felt like my parents were my best friends. So as you can imagine, having this vision changes how you approach, right? It changes it's a big why, right? Well, time's limited. And when you look at it from that point, now all of a sudden, how you show up in your day changes because you have a powerful vision. So it improved that area of my life. And then also the case study is sometimes your life, you lose focus. Sometimes you wake up and you don't really feel like doing anything. In moments like that, it's extremely important to have this process in front of you so you can look at it. So what this does is it reminds you all the reasons why you're why you're here in the first place. And all of a sudden you go from this state of not really caring about anything to being jazzed up because you're reminded, by reading your vision, your purpose, you're creating pictures in your mind. You start to get excited, you start to get more emotion, and you start to get in motion. So let's go over what are some questions that people commonly ask. One of the things is, well, what makes you qualified, Donnie Rouse? And I would say what makes me qualified is life. I can honestly say that I'm one of the few people that are living a life that they've designed, living a life that they are proud of. And I say that because it took over 13 years of conscious energy and effort to build this, of me having courageous action and say, well, what is it that I want? And what do I have to do? Like what kind of actions do I have to take to get me there? But also following my heart. And I'd be lying to say if I did it alone. I had coaches helping me. I had, going to seminars. I've read books. I surrounded myself with people who would encourage me and would support me in those dreams, which is extremely important. And so seeing, doing all the travels and the podcast, the coffee, I would look around and I would see people who were unhappy, people who would look at me and I could tell there was this desperation in their voice. And I said, those are the people I want to help. This is the reason. The reason why I'm doing it is because this is not something that I'm not special in the way that, in the sense that only I can create a life that I love. Like you can, of course you can do it. Everybody could create a life that they're passionate and love. It just requires a different way of thinking. It requires taking some actions. And most of all, it requires being conscious as to what is controlling your life right now, what the vision is controlling, what are the beliefs controlling. So this way you can turn that ship around and in the direction you want. Why is it important to have a blueprint? The next question. I kind of reference this in what I just said. If you don't have a blueprint, you're wrong, right? You are following a blueprint, whether you know it or not. You're following a blueprint. The thing is that you may not like where that blueprint is taking you. You see, if you're not consciously designing your life, what you're doing is you're allowing the culturescape, i.e. everything else around you, to influence and guide where you're going. Places like the beliefs of your family, the expectations of your family, religious, the culture, the place that you live, your group of friends. All of these are influencing where you're going. So if you're not putting the conscious thought, you're living by default, and you may be headed in a place where you don't want to be. So the literally, I'll say this once and I'll say it a million times. One of the most beneficial and positive things you do for your life is to apply conscious thought to all the areas of your life to figure out what it is you want and where you want to move towards, so you can start moving in that direction and creating the life of your dreams. Next question is, what if what I want changes? All right. So you do this, you do your life visioning process, and now all of a sudden you realize, you're like, you know what? I thought I wanted this, but no, I don't want that. I want that. That's fine, right? Because the only way you're going to know what it is you want is by making decisions, realizing that maybe the path that you wanted to go down, you didn't really want to go down. And now you can make a change. But had you not made that decision, had you not taken that action, you never would have known. So it's very powerful to have contrast in life, because contrast gives you clarity. And one of the things in creating your life vision is to always seek clarity. Always seek more clarity, because the more clarity you have, the more power you have, in the more momentum you can get, because you're being driven by a bigger vision, more purpose. The next question I get a lot actually was, how often do I need to change my blueprint? There's this, I think like it's a mindset where people think like, once I do it, I could set it and forget it, right? This is not one of those bake ovens you get on the shopping channel. Your life vision is something that is going to constantly change and evolve. Why? Because you're constantly changing and evolving. So that's why it's so important to spend time in the vision of your life, because you are not the same person you were yesterday, and you are definitely not the same person you were 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So if you're living by that old vision that is no longer relevant then you're driving in the wrong direction. So the best thing to do is to update your vision, is to constantly give it your focus and attention, so this way you can always make sure that you are going on the right path. And so the next question is, why is it important to create the categories in life and separate and have a separate blueprint or vision for each? So if you're not focusing on it, if you're not measuring it, it doesn't improve. What is out of your sight won't improve. And if you don't focus on, if you leave, let's use your health, for example, right? The easiest way to do it is just to kind of give you an example. Let's say that you were living your life and you were doing all the things for all the other categories, but the one thing you left out was your health. What do you think happens after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of not focusing on maintaining good health? Maybe in your successful work, you've been sitting a lot, but now all of a sudden you realize you don't move very much, and now you can't move because everything's stiff. Or you realize, you had to get, your health is waned, and now you get that terrible news from a doctor because you didn't do the things up front. So the reason why we create a blueprint for every area of your life is so that nothing gets left out, so that you're constantly aware of the different parts of your life that need to be managed, and you're constantly measuring it. So when one thing falls behind, you could, because the categories, it's not like your health only impacts your health, right? Your health impacts every single category of your life. And the same is true for all of your categories. All of the categories impact every other area. They're interdependent. How will a blueprint impact my life? So by having a blueprint, what you're doing is you're looking at a vision for your life. You're looking at all the reasons why. And here is how it'll do. One, it'll eliminate distractions. Because when you know what it is you want, you know what is going to get you there. You also know what's going to distract you and take you off course. So you make better decisions. Secondly, it keeps you emotionally charged. So when you are feeling down, like sometimes you have ever had those days where you feel like it was just difficult to move forward. So your blueprint, when you have that vision for your life and you're looking at it daily, what it does is it keeps you emotionally charged. Like I've had days where I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to have a cup of coffee, relax, and that's it. But then I pick up my blueprint And looking at that blueprint, I'm reminded of all the things that I said that I want and that I committed to and the standards I have for my life. Now, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I got to get going. I got to start creating. So it emotionally charges my day. And as a result, I start to take better actions because I'm connected to that emotion, to each area of my life. Also, it gives meaning to the journey, right? Whatever we want in life, it's always because we want something, right? You want the $1 million? No, you don't want the $1 million. You want what you think the $1 million will give you. It's like everything else in life, right? I'm a world traveler. Why do I want to travel? Because I believe that traveling will give me these experiences. So as a result, it's what you're going to gain, your purpose, the reasons that are supporting the vision, or that are feeding the vision for it is that you have for each category of your life. And what another thing that this does is when you have a powerful vision for your life, it exposes the disempowering beliefs. Now, I won't go in. There's another question that often comes up with people, so I won't steal the thunder here, but I feel like a lot of people can get stuck on the disempowering beliefs because they feel like they have to eradicate those first. So I'll cover that I'll swing back around. You know what? I'll do that question right now. What if I have disempowering beliefs? Do I need to seek and eliminate those first? No. See, when you're focusing on what it is that you want, when you're focused on your vision, those beliefs are going to make themselves known. Like, all right, you want $1 million. All of a sudden, all these reasons, all the scarcity beliefs you have around money are going to come there, like, oh, but money's evil. So you don't have to seek them out, right? Remember, where focus goes, energy flows. The last thing you want to do is focus on the negative, on the problems, because as a result of putting your focus there, that's when you're going to get more of. But when you're focusing on the vision that you have for your life, yes, these negative beliefs are going to expose themselves and they're going to make themselves known. But there's a process, and you could start breaking down those belief systems to see that they're not true at all. They don't exist. And there's a whole process for that I'm not going to get into in this question. But what I want you to, the biggest takeaway I want you to get from this is you don't need to seek out the problems. You don't need to seek out the disempowering beliefs and all the things that are wrong. Focus on what is right. Focus on where you want to go. And when these things pop up, as they most certainly will, then you work and you eliminate them. How do I know if I have it right? So how do you know if you have the right blueprint for your life or for the categories? One of the things that I use is your emotions, right? Your emotions are going to tell you whether or not you're on the right path. And what do I mean by that? Meaning, like, when you have an empowering vision, you're going to get excited, right? It's like if I were to tell you, like, all right, well, tell me some of the things you're passionate about, right? You may be like, oh, well, I love soccer. I love it. And as you're explaining these things, like, all this energy is being like built up in your body and you start to get excited. The same is true with your visions and your, doing your visions, your purpose. It's going to let you know through the emotions. And what I want you to, as you're creating this blueprint for your own life, what I want you to do is not to fall in the trap of thinking that this has to happen right away. Because as I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, is that, like, you know what you want. You may not know exactly what you want, but you have a general idea. So at the very least, take that general idea. And as you spend time working on your blueprint, refine it and get more clarity. As you get more clarity, that's when the emotion is going to come. But don't give it up. Don't give it up before you've even started. Don't say, well, I don't know. I don't feel the emotional intensity yet to my vision. Keep working on it. Keep plugging away, because as you put more energy there, as you ask different questions, you're going to get more clarity. And that clarity is where the energy comes in. That clarity is where all the emotion gets built up. And then how do you implement your blueprint? So this is my personal recommendations. When you have your blueprint, you have your visions. One thing is, I try to spend as much time as I can doing those. And sometimes I find myself, if I'm honest with you, sometimes I find like, you know what, I really don't feel like putting my focus there. I don't want to pick it up. I don't want to read my booklet. I have a 3-ring binder that I keep my blueprint in. But if I also, honestly, I also tell you every time I do, I'm very proud. I'm very happy that I did, because the the not wanting to spend time is the false belief system that by spending time there, you're wasting time, or you're not going to have time to put in another area, or whatever it is you have to do for your day. But here's the truth. When you're emotionally charged, when you know what it is you're going after, you don't go slower, you go faster and with more ease. So always spend your time. Like, you want to keep putting focus and time into your blueprint to get it to the area where it's clear, and it energizes you. It inspires you when you read it. So, and this could be done, I would say at the very least, go open your blueprint once a week and look at the minimum once a month. But here's the thing: the more you open it, the more likely you are to make strides and improve. Because as you open it, if you're reading, if you're not even doing the measuring, you'll be doing like a mental measuring, because you'll be reading this blueprint, the vision for this area of your life. And you'll be you'll comparing where you are versus where you want to be. And then when you start looking at the strategies, you'll be like, oh, well, wow, I didn't do this today. Maybe I should. So at the very, very least, once a month, and preferably once a week. And at the end of every year, you should do a deep dive into your blueprint and say, okay, well, how does this, like looking at all the categories of your life, looking at all the visions, purpose, beliefs, everything we covered, how is this still relevant to what I want right now? Sometimes it changes, in which case, change your blueprint, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And is the process for coming up with your blueprint simple? And if so, why don't most people do it? Well, here's the thing, right? So common sense isn't always common practice. Talk to someone who, health is always a good one, because I feel like this is an area where a lot of people, they know what they're supposed to be doing, but don't do it. Right? You know that you're not supposed to, that it's not healthy to substitute your water in your day for coffee or an alcoholic drink, right? But maybe you do. Right? So a lot of the things we know, like that it's healthy to move. Otherwise, if you're sitting all day, you become tight, things hurt, and it doesn't get better, it gets worse. Right? We know these things. But common sense isn't always common practice. And most people are unaware of the conditioning, the programming that is going on. So as a result of not being aware of it, they never even bother to ask, well, am I going in the direction that I want? Is this something that's aligned with my true values, what I want for my life? Next is like a lot of people, they're constantly responding to internal demands, so much so that they don't feel like they have the time to devote towards their own life. So there's, all right, well, the process, it is simple. It is very simplistic in nature, but it requires you to take time and put conscious effort and energy into creating it. But if you're overwhelmed by all the demands of the people and the world around you, there's very little chance that you're going to spend the time to devote to creating your life. But this is the most important thing. This is where you should be spending your time first. And I know everyone has demands. Maybe, 10 minutes a day. By putting your conscious thought there, you'll start to develop momentum, you'll start to build excitement, and you'll start to spend more time because you're getting to give to yourself first. So what I want to do now is, I want to show you there's the main things you need to know in order to succeed with this. I wrote a list here for you. One is, don't be perfect. Take imperfect action, because imperfect action is always perfect. If you're always waiting to take the perfect action, you're literally going to be sitting, because there's no such thing as perfect, right? Perfection depends on something else, right? So you just need to get in motion and start doing the exercises, start creating your vision plans, your vision, your purpose, your belief system, your strategy, your goals, your identity, your action, and start moving in that direction, taking that action. Once you take that, then you're momentum, then you can make changes, then you can get more clarity. And then you could build towards that beautiful, imperfect perfection. Secondly, is just to give yourself grace, right? Acknowledge where you are. Like it's not life is not always easy. So by giving yourself grace, I mean just acknowledge the struggles you have. Acknowledge where you are. Acknowledge that you're here listening to this now, looking to better yourself, to get more clear about your vision, to build a more passionate life. And give yourself the grace to know that you're a work in progress. And so the other one is committing time. There's kind of what I had said before in one of the questions. You need to commit the time. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, nothing is going to get done unless you take the time to do it. We do the things that are most important to us. We spend our time in the areas that are most important to us. So what I'm saying is, when you're putting your thoughts into your conscious life, you're saying, this is important. This is where I'm going to put my time. If you're putting your time, excuse me, if you're putting your time into watching a TV show, what you're saying is, this entertainment, this quick release, this quick emotional laugh, whatever you're feeling in this moment, that is more important than developing a vision for your life. Right? We say what we let the world know what's important to us by where we spend our time. So where are you spending your time? The next one is just planning the work. It's so easy. Again, like I said, like time, things are going to come, demands are going to come in your day. But it's extremely important to block the time out to work, and also to be disciplined to say, okay, you know what, in this time, nothing else comes onto my desk or into my mind except the work that I'm doing right now. It may help to turn your phone off. But where I had the most success in doing this was literally turning all electronics off and just focusing on the one task at hand. Because often as I'm wanting to put my attention into doing this, right, the other demands come. I'm like, oh, I got to email this person. I got to send, I have to do that later. And all these things are coming into my mind. And your mind is always going to keep going. But when I committed, the game changer was when I committed to the process. When I said, you know what, in this time, I'm blocking this time specifically to work on this category or this area of my life, and nothing else is going to interrupt that time. When I started giving myself that gift of my own time, when I started blocking it for myself, that's when I started to make progress in it. That's when I started to see the results. Put your life first. So before you can take on demands around you, you have to give it to yourself first. It's kind of like the adage when you're on a plane. They say, put your life mask on you first before helping anyone else. Because if you don't, then you can't help anybody. So you got to take care of yourself first. Remember it's a marathon, right? It's easy to want that instantaneous result. They say, you know what? I should have the result now. It's only been 3 days, right? Like, well, how come I'm not a millionaire? How come I'm not traveling the world? If I'm saying this, you're probably laughing because it sounds stupid, but yet it's what you expect for many areas of your life, right? You worked out, you're like, oh, but I don't see the results yet. Give yourself time, the gift of time. And remember that it's a journey. It's a journey, not a sprint. It's a marathon. Sorry, it's a marathon and not a sprint. When you take this approach, what you're doing is you're fixing your gaze at the horizon, saying, okay, well, that is what I'm after. Here is where I am. Let's just keep going, and eventually we're going to get to that promised land. And lastly is you are where you put your focus. Where your focus goes, energy flows. The idea of a rear view mirror, I'll give you a story to give you an example of this. So where you put your focus, most people are driving with their eyes in the rearview mirror, meaning they know what they want, but they're focusing on what they're afraid of and what they don't want. And as a result, that is where they end up going. When I was in high school, I remember I was with my friends. It was raining out now. We were coming back. We were driving home from a party. And going around in the city I live in, there's North Stanford. There's all these like tight curves and like where you can't even see. Like you turn a corner, you don't even know what is right beyond that turn. And in this instance, there was a stop sign that fed me out into one of the arteries of the city. When I was coming around that corner, all of a sudden I see the stop sign. I slam on the brakes, and because it was raining, I skidded right into the middle of the street. And right across from that street was a bridge. So I was on collision course to literally dump over that bridge onto one of the highways. So I was looking there. We're all, it's kind of funny now looking at it. You know, everyone's like freaking out, screaming in the car. I'm screaming, my hands extended, like as I'm looking at this bridge. But then something in me, like I turned the wheel, I looked left, and I just put my foot on the gas, right? I took it off the brake, but I turned the wheel and I put my foot on the gas. And at that last minute, my wheels caught. And all of a sudden, the car, from going like perpendicular to where that bridge was, all of a sudden went whoop, straightened out. And now I was going down the road. So what I'm trying to make is where you put your focus is where you end up going. Where you put your energy is where you end up driving towards. Keep your focus on what you don't want. That is what you're going to get. One of the other things you need to keep in mind is to measure. Measure. Kind of like the Brady Bunch, Martha. Measure. Because unless you're constantly measuring, you don't know where, like if you're making progress or not. You could be winning but thinking you're losing. When I was doing a weightlifting competition for my physique, there was time for 2.5 months. I was weightlifting and I wasn't seeing like the muscle growth. But one thing that I was doing was I was constantly measuring every single day. Like I was measuring my measurements around my arms and all the other areas. And while I wasn't seeing the growth in these areas, I was seeing the growth in the weights I was putting up. And that was what allowed me to push forward and make some small changes, mainly to my diet. It went all of a sudden like poof, and the muscles exploded and I was huge. But if I had not measured, I wouldn't have known that I was actually winning the game. And lastly, be consistent. Using the gym as an example, right? You would never say, oh, you know what? I went to the gym once. Like, what the hell's wrong with my body? Like, why don't I have a six-pack? No, you wouldn't say that in a million years. That sounds silly. But the same is true for every area of your life. Like, you need to give consistent action in order to get a result, because as you do that consistent action, results compound and you start to see bigger gains. So is true with your blueprint. Not just in consistent action in actually completing the blueprint and building out these visions for your life, but in the effort that it goes. You need to be consistent with the steps you take, but not, being careful not to bite off too much, because what happens when you're trying to change too much at one time is you're going to get overwhelmed and you're just going to kind of like self-implode. You're not going to do anything. But doing small things, developing the habit through consistency, and then doing the next thing, and that's when you'll start to see the results. So here is what I am going to offer you in a few days. So I'm going to be opening registration for my signature program, the One Life Blueprint. And the One Life Blueprint is everything I talked about. It's about identifying the categories, identifying the vision, like that will pull you forward and give you the reasons, all the reasons why you want what you want. So what we're doing here is we're creating, if you want to say law of attraction, you could use that. That's the fancy word now. You can even say we're building resonance, meaning the point of doing this blueprint is, one, to give you clarity, because with clarity comes power. Right now, you also know the actions you need to take. You know the most direct path to get there. But the resonance, guess what happens as you're looking over this vision, as you're reading it? Right now, all of a sudden, you start to put your mind in the state of having had this already, right? Isn't that what you do whenever if you think about a trip that you want to go on, if you think about something that you're very passionate about, something that inspires you, you're like, oh my God, yeah, I could see myself I could see myself on Greece, like sitting on that beach, like eating a Greek salad. Oh my God, the feta cheese there is amazing, right? You start to anticipate and see yourself there. And that is one of the first things that you need to do, because the counter to that is focusing on what you don't want, and you don't want to move in that direction. So the One Life Blueprint, again, what it does is we walk you through the entire process, right? We look at all the categories. We take an accounting of our life, saying, okay, well, where have we been putting our energy? Like, what have been the belief systems that have been controlling our actions? What are the thoughts? What are the actions we take? Where are we spending our time? Once you know that, then you could start to get clarity as to, all right, well, now how do I change? But the next step in that is to create your vision. Again, the vision is that big picture of what you're moving towards. That is the pull. It's the direction you're going. You want to make sure that that vision is far enough out where you have to close the gap. It's who you're becoming. And the most important piece of that is your purpose, the P. The purpose is the reasons why. These are all the reasons why you're going to follow through. After the purpose, we have your belief systems, the beliefs that you must have in order to create that vision. You have to have a certain set of beliefs. Your old beliefs gave you what you have now, right? Which might not be a bad thing, but you want growth, you want more. It might require a better belief system. So we have to upgrade those beliefs. The next is your strategy. We have the beliefs. Now those feed into the strategy. Your strategy is, how are you going to get that thing that you want, that vision that you want? It's like what you have to do. Who can you ask? A very important and powerful question. Who can you ask that already has a result that can guide you? But we start to list down all the things that are going to move us towards that vision. And they don't have to be complex most of the time. Sometimes it's the most simplest of tasks that once you take consistent action on them, you start to see the results. The next is goals, right? Because we agree, life is not about waiting to live for some point in the future. We want to live now, right? Because not a single day is for granted, right? Every day is a blessing. So let's put some goals on the calendar that like jazz us up, that excite us, that make us feel passionate and excited about life. And when you go after those goals, it's like an added benefit is because by going after some of these things, the goals you set, they create your identity, which is the next section. The identity is, if I travel to 5 countries in 1 year, guess what? I'm a world traveler. Now all of a sudden, what I actually do is I travel to 4 to 5 countries every single year because it's part of my identity. And if I don't do it, and I'm like, oh my God, like I have to stand true to this. This is who I am. So your identity is powerful. One, not just because when you look at your category from an identity, now all of a sudden you think differently about the actions you have to think, and a different part of you shows up. But it's also because it may require different parts of your life, require different parts of you, even a category, right? So take your health, for example. Like to do your health, it's not just a matter of going to work out. Like you got meal prep, your nutrition, your movement. Like there's different aspects. So it's important to have identities that feed those different aspects because they allow you to take action from a different state of mind. And then lastly, and one of the most important too, they're all, every step that I just outlaid here is important, is action. Because if you don't take the action, you're not going to get any results. You're not going to move forward. And we said with action, one of the best things you can do is take committed action. What is committed action? Committed action is that action where you are burning your boat, meaning you are leaving no other action but forward. And as a result of that, burning all their other options, the only place to go forward is to take the island, is to get that result, that vision that you want. So that is the entire process. So in the One Life Blueprint, I walk you through that entire process, but we do it in a way that's easy to digest. We do one category a week. It takes place over 3 months. And the reason why it is set up like this is so this way you don't get overwhelmed. You don't try to jump ahead, but you give each area of your life the consciousness that it deserves. So this way, once you go through the entire thing, then you can circle back around and you could refine. You could refine through the entire process, but I encourage you just to literally take one category at a time. So the other thing you get to make it more beneficial for you is you get live calls, right? So one of the biggest um, issues I had when I was creating my life and I was trying different programs was that I didn't have a place that I could get my answers. I could ask questions. But that's what I give you in this program. I give you once a week, you get a live call with me to ask any questions you have. If you're stuck on something, you're having a mindset issue, you bring it up in this live meeting. And I'll walk you through. Again, the whole purpose here is so that you don't get stuck, but that you create the momentum so you could keep moving forward passionately in your life. And the other thing you'll also get, so it's not, you'll get the calls with me, but you also get an invite to the One Life Blueprint Pro group where you can share your wins, ask questions, get accountability, meet like-minded people. Because you are the sum of the 5 people closest to you, right? So you want to surround yourself with people who have similar goals, people who have aspirations to become and do and be more. Because as a result of being around those people who are just hungry for life to experience more, you are going to want to be hungry and experience more. And then last is as a result of literally going through the entire process that I just mentioned here, what you're going to get, you're going to feel more aligned with who you are. Why? Because you are creating your life based on your values. You're going to get focused because now no longer are you off going on different tangents, but now you're taking actions with a destination in mind. And as a result, it takes away all those turns and those detours, but you're going the quickest path there. Another thing you're doing this course will do, it'll give you better quality questions. So as you're aiming to get more clarity by asking different questions of what you want, you'll start to think about life differently. Meaning you'll start to say, okay, well, what is it I want out of this dinner tonight with my family? What is it that I want out of this vacation? What do I want with this phone call with my significant other? What is it that I want out of this workout as a result of that? Guess what kind of results you get? Much better results. Results that are aligned with, ding, ding, what you want. And the last thing, and I can't say this enough, the most important thing you can do is to bring consciousness to your day. Very few people spend what you are about to do in this program. Very few people ever put that kind of consciousness, that devoted consciousness, into every area of their life. Think what do you think that would do if you started to put focus in all the different areas of life? It lifts the game. All of a sudden now you start to see every single area of your life start to improve and get better. And as a result, your life gets better because your life is the sum of all these areas of your life that are important to you. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this marathon video. If you did, please share this with 5 people. Hit that like button. And in the comment section, ask your questions. I'm here to answer them, to serve you. And more than anything, I want you to know that life, every moment, the fact that you're here, every single moment is a gift. We're not guaranteed a single moment out of right now. So my desire for you is to live the most passionate version of your life, a life that is aligned with your values, a life that is created by you, not by the world around you. So remember this, you only get one life. Live it fully, live it passionately, and most of all, live it now. God bless. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.